What made the high school legend become a legend? Story 1. We had a teacher who was infamous for not letting you go to the bathroom no matter what. So there was a girl who we'll call Katie in class who tended to be a bit of a troublemaker. Now, Katie hated that teacher because she'd begged to go to the bathroom and got shot down every time. At the end of the year, Katie asked one more time to go to the bathroom, and the teacher said no. Katie asked another time 5 minutes later, and the teacher said no again. 5 minutes after that, Katie asked again, but said that the teacher was not going to like what happened if the teacher didn't let her go. The teacher hit the roof and said that if she said one more thing, Katie would be sent to the principal. Katie shrugged and said, "Well, this is on you then," and pissed on her seat right where she was. The teacher sent her to the principal, who called her parents, one of which was a urologist, and her father yelled at the principal. The teacher ended up in deep crap, and according to other kids, she never denied another kid the bathroom again. Katie was a legend. Story 2. It's pretty stupid, but a friend wore a Walmart hot dog costume. For some reason, everyone thought it was funny and started chanting "Hot Dog Kid," and he won the Best Halloween Costume award for that year. Now, the next year, he wore a penguin costume, and as he stepped out onto stage, he ripped it off to reveal the hot dog costume underneath. Everybody lost it. Sadly, we have a rule now that you can't win 2 years in a row, so while he didn't get the prize, we all knew who had the best costume that day. That is how the legend of Hot Dog Kid was born at my high school. Man, these kids are pretty easy to please, right? Like in an innocent and wholesome way. What cracks us up the most? Another kid in a hot dog costume. It's timeless and hilarious, and everyone gets a good laugh from it. I feel bad for the penguin crowd, though. Like, why isn't that considered funny? And why couldn't he have moved on to another baseball park food, like a giant peanut or something? Story 3. The senior class was gathered in the gym for a pep rally type event, but there weren't any planned events, so we students were getting bored and restless. In an effort to engage us, teachers offered to let kids tell jokes into the microphone. The very first guy that goes to the microphone triumphantly asks, "How deep are we gonna go, men?" And every male in the stands shouts back, "Balls deep! How deep? Balls deep!" The call and response quickly ended when the teachers swarmed him and took away the microphone. Jokes were over for the day. Later in the year, they hold another senior event in the gym, but instead of jokes, they let kids sing karaoke. Fun! Until the microphone goes missing between songs. Everyone is sitting in the stands when that same guy stands up laughing his butt off because someone handed him the microphone. The teachers say, "Don't," and he just keeps laughing. He manages to ask a single question into the microphone, "How deep?" And for the first time, I understood school pride as 900 students, even the girls, joined in shouting, "Balls deep!" Legend. Story 4. Someone installed games onto our school's server. There were a bunch of N64 emulators, Peggle, and some other games, but then there was also LAN games that could be played against anyone and everyone in the school, including Counter-Strike and Halo. Sometimes you'd go on and there'd be no one, and other times there'd be like 10 versus 10 fights in Blood Gulch. It lasted at least 10 years, but I don't know if it has been taken down since. Story 5. Year 10 head boy has to be picked. Now this is England, and it's picked by vote. It's a year group of about 150 students. So we had the obvious popular, well-liked by everyone kids. We had the popular lads, the football captain, and the sophisticated obvious choice. Now me and my little posse of in-betweeners, I suggested, yeah, screw that. We picked one guy from the Forgotten Kids Club. Let's call him Carl. Now, this guy has pretty below average grades, not a lick of athletic ability, and his social abilities, well, he's part of a group of kids that stays behind and spends lunch in the teacher's class because he got bullied so hard on the schoolyard. Carl found himself named head boy to his absolute shock due to the minority being united and the knobheads all split and vying for position. He was a good dude as well, really committed himself to it. His grades improved, and he became a better speaker, and the lad glowed up considerably, and by the end of the year 11, we had a whole army of people carrying him down the street for the final end-of-exam celebration. We would just sing his praises despite not knowing him that well, and it just kind of caught on. Now I know it's a jerk move, but we did generally like him and thought it would be good for him. I like to take credit for suggesting the whole movement, but really it was just a testament to how one downtrodden dude can rise to the occasion and become an absolute ambassador for the entire school. He won everyone over. The dude was impossible to hate. I'm glad there was a wholesome outcome after what started off what seemed kind of like a practical joke. Like, clearly they did not anticipate how it would turn out, but the big confidence boost for this kid received from the nomination is great. Makes you wonder, though, why weren't they doing more from the beginning to befriend this kid and build his confidence then? But at least karma and if fate had a way of intervening. Story 6. Not my story, but my friend's. My buddy went to a military boarding school for high school. Very strict and regimented, with little to no tolerance for misbehavior. Multiple years of this environment must have pushed someone off the deep end because during my buddy's second year, someone started crapping in the urinals. Big, sloppy, shameless dookies. At least once a month for 3 years, these turds would just appear. The culprit became known as the Phantom Crapper, and despite the efforts of a task force specifically assembled to put an end to the nefarious poops, the Phantom Crapper was never captured. Now, this person became a legend at this boarding school because of their stealth, conviction, and utter lack of shame. My buddy kept in touch with one of his instructors over the years and found out years later that a copycat crapper had briefly popped up, but he was discovered and expelled after only a few dookies. He lacked the finesse of the mysterious original. Story 7. One of my friends throughout school was Army Punk Guy. He always wore camo clothing, a jean vest, chains, military boots, and had spiked hair that Wayne Static would approve of. Now, most people saw my friend as just this weirdo, but knew not to screw with him. He was actually a really cool dude and had me hooked on Pink Floyd and Zeppelin early on. One day in high school, the staff arranged a fun fling, or whatever the hell they called it, and it was basically a few amusement park attractions like the arcade and skill booths and a rock wall climbing tower. The tower had 3 sides each with their own tether, and it must have been 35 feet tall. Now, most kids couldn't even make it halfway up. My friend went over and started climbing before the attendant could get him fitted with a harness. He was about 10 feet up and the staff were yelling at him. He yelled back, "What's that? You want me to try it using only my arms?" And ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly how it happened. He managed to get himself to the freaking top of this climbing wall only using his arms, no harness, and then proceeded to sit at the top taunting everyone. They called the fire department to get him down. Now he got suspended and, frankly, he didn't care. That was around 20 years ago. Story 8. This guy didn't become a high school legend until the last 10 minutes of our last day of school. I went to school with this kid for 5 years who, throughout all of high school, was bullied for the way that he looked, considered a teacher's pet, generally unpopular with most of the school. No one knew much about him at all, apart from the reasons that he was, unfortunately, bullied and ostracized so hard. On the last day of our final year at high school, we had a leavers ceremony where teachers gave speeches and students were given awards, etc. Typical painstaking, sit down for 2 hours while you watch all the accomplished sports kids drown in trophies type ceremony. Now, out of nowhere, the principal introduced a performance from this kid, the notorious unpopular teacher's pet. We were all so confused, like what could he possibly be performing? He got up on our teacher's theater stage as if he were going to do a stand-up special, and he then proceeded to perform a 10-minute long Adult Swim-style sketch in which he did spot-on impressions of not only every single teacher in the school in front of them, but the exam invigilators, the cleaners, and even the diner ladies. This guy had fully produced and scripted an entire one-man sketch where he played all of the characters, and the characters being every member of the staff in the school. For the very last time, we would all be in that hall together. It was truly a then everybody clapped moment in real life as he got a standing ovation from every teacher in the hall and all 120 students who relentlessly bullied him all these years prior. It felt like a massive middle finger to everyone who underestimated and ignored him. This mystery kid who'd been bullied and ignored for his entire 5 years at our high school became a legend within 10 minutes on the very last hour of the very last day of our time in that place. And then I never saw him again. Wonder where he is now. By the sounds of it, I would guess that this guy is a cast member on Saturday Night Live or doing some stand-up comedy somewhere. Someone who can own their craft and pull it off that well in front of people is definitely going places. It's a good reminder to never underestimate the quiet, smart kid in your class. Probably shed some light on the fact that he was bullied because of some insecurity or jealousy by his classmates. In the comments, does anyone remember that kid from high school who unexpectedly went on to do great things? Story 9. There was this one sophomore who had a goose for a pet. Now, he kind of lived close so he could walk to school, and he would always let his goose walk with him. We all called him Goose, and he was a really nice guy to hang out with. Even the teachers liked petting his goose. One time he was at school when one of the teachers who wasn't chill with his pet came out and started yelling at him about the goose, and he got a detention somehow. Now, the next day, the same teacher wasn't in class. We find out at a small assembly at the end of the day that Goose had let his goose run around the classroom last night, and apparently the teacher was still there grading and got a beak to the head. No one messed with him for the rest of the school year. Story 10. Got a couple here that are somewhat related. In 10th grade Spanish, we had this teacher who was a bit strict and didn't have much of a tolerance for nonsense in class. But her punishments didn't have much teeth, so naturally the class would collectively see how much that we could get away with. One, potato chips in Spanish is papas fritas. Someone decided to start saying papas chores. Now she would say no, that's not it. But we told her that a substitute teacher we had one time, who was a native Spanish speaker, told us that in some dialects it's papas chores. And she bought it. All so that we could sneak the word chores into stuff and write it on the board. It even went so far that unsuspecting students in the class used it on the state test, and I'm pretty sure it continued in subsequent years. Now, second one, same class, we had a project where we had to invent a product and film a commercial for it with a Spanish script. Now, this was a partner project, and my partner told me that he wanted to make a shampoo bottle that was shaped like a large willy. We called it El Palo Divertido, the fun stick. He went home and made the thing out of paper mache. He sent me a picture, and I got scared because this thing was not subtle at all. I was sure that we were going to get in trouble. So we brought it to class the next day. Our teacher looked at it, held it, and I swear to you, practically fondled it. We were nervously holding our breath. And she said it was great. Now work on your script. Now somehow we flew under her radar. A class meeting or two later, and we had all took turns filming our commercials in class. Our routine involved numerous phallic gestures with this miraculous versatile willy-shaped shampoo bottle. You can get the shampoo out by stroking the shaft. You can also use it as a lip balm. Rub the tip on your lips, stick your tongue out a little, and you can clean your ears with it, willy in the air. We were being so obvious with this thing that the class was cracking up the whole time, and somehow we didn't get in trouble. The teacher thought it was all very, very well prepared. We got a really good grade on the project, and she even showed the video to her other class sections and other classes in subsequent years as a good example of how to do this project. Story 11. So my school was essentially divided into a middle school and a high school in different locations, but very much one school. When you finished year 9, you started year 10 at the upper or high school. So we were in year 9, and this one kid had somehow got into a beef with this kid in year 11. So one from upper high school and one from middle school. A year 9 kid is supposed to be what, 13 or 14? And a year 11 kid is like 15 or 16. So there was a sizable age gap between these two guys. I don't actually know how these two managed to get into a beef while at different locations, but they managed it, and the year 11 kid was like, hey, Friday after school, I'm going to come down to your middle school and beat the crap out of you. The year 9 kid was like, no problem, buddy. So the day comes, and everybody's getting ready for this fight. It's all anybody talks about that day. School is done, and everybody gathers to see what happens. Now, teachers have caught wind of what's going on as they're posted at the gates, holding the year 11 kid back. The year 9 kid finds out his opponent is being prevented from entering the school grounds, so what does he do? Yeah, he runs a cool 150 meters towards the gate, knocking over people left and right. There was a huge crowd around because both guys trying to defuse the situation before ripping his shirt off like Hulk Hogan and beating the ever-loving crap out of the year 11 kid. He ragdolled that dude so bad. Nobody ever messed with him again, and people were legit terrified of him. The thing that made it so legendary is that the older kid thought that he was hot stuff, came down to the school like he was going to do something, and then this kid just whips his shirt off like a superhero and wrecks him. What I will add, too, is that the year 9 kid was supernaturally strong. Like, it didn't make any sense. He was strong in a way that seemed odd. We had a weight room, and he could put up way more weight than anyone else, and then he would play fight with teachers and then manhandle them. Now, he had transferred in from a school in Jamaica, so at the time of the fight, nobody knew that he was that strong. And also, looking back, there's a good chance that he was actually like 17. This skill of earning respect by beating up another student will come in handy when this person inevitably goes to prison. Now, I don't know why, but I just got that feeling that he's got some hard time in the future. Something about tearing your shirt off to fight seems like some criminal activity awaits this person. Or maybe he was hiding from some previous criminal activity because all of a sudden this guy apparently shows up from Jamaica and just starts beating up kids. Story 12. I was actually part of the legend that still carries to this day. I was one of the editors of our school newspaper, and as a whole, we decided to do an entire issue looking at the drug problem the school had. Our teacher was supportive of it and taught us how to do investigative journalism. After a month or so, we had everything together, and it was really, really impressive. However, when the administration found out, they put the kibosh on it real quick and refused to release funds to have it published. We were annoyed and decided to raise the money to self-publish it. Thankfully, my mom was a prominent business owner in the community and bought an ad for considerably more than we charged typically. She was impressed with our work and thought people deserved to see the paper. With the influx of money, we got it published and distributed it before the administration could step in. We also dropped off copies everywhere we could. Naturally, the community was outraged that kids were doing drugs in the parking lot in between classes and that there was photographic proof of it too. We made the photos, so couldn't really tell who it was. Now, there was so much outrage that parents showed up at the next school board meeting and demanded answers. The head of the school board nearly had to step down and the principal was put through the ringer. After that issue, our funding was completely pulled and the paper was shut down. We continued to have journalism classes, but yeah, it wasn't the same. We ended up submitting the issue and won all sorts of awards for it too. Now, 16 years later, the school still doesn't have a newspaper, and the story as to why is still told. It's one of the few things I did in high school that I'm actually proud of too. Story 13. There was one teacher that was crazy hated because she refused to let anyone have fun. So the day that the kid sitting next to me, we'll call him Dave, is on his phone, and the teacher, Gorilla, says, "Get off your phone, it's distracting you from your education." Keep in mind that this is a smart kid, and he's done with his work for the day, as this was our last period. So Dave looks up at her, smirks, and goes back to playing PvZ Heroes. Now Gorilla becomes upset and completely embarrasses him in front of the whole class. "This is why you have 2 missing assignments, and we needed an intervention with your parents. Judging by the fact that I could hear them scream at you as soon as you left the building, I'm guessing they weren't happy. Get off your phone, it's making you lose educational time." Now he responds by aggressively digging through his bag. "What are you doing?" the gorilla asks. "Looking for who the hell cares," is what he said. Dead silence for about 7 seconds before all the kids in the room burst out laughing hysterically. And the teacher just looks flabbergasted. She sent him to the office, and when he returned to get his stuff, he gave her a death stare and a smug look. Best thing ever. I have to admit, I have not heard that comeback before, but it's a pretty solid response, really, because clearly this teacher couldn't handle not being the center of tension or something, or how quickly this student could complete his projects. Did they really feel threatened by how easily they completed their assigned work? Now, I remember those days in high school, too, being really fun. You just get your work done and then move into some PC gaming. Man, those were the days. Story 14. I have an average sense of humor. I go for quantity one-liners and almost none stick. But there was this one time. I was 18 years old and moved into a new dorm second semester. It's a floor loaded with stoners, bodybuilders, lacrosse players, women who had their stuff together with never a bad hair day, all confident extroverts, and then me. Now, if you made a floor from the students who sat at the cool lunch table in high school, this was the floor. There were parties. It was happening. People were nice to me, but I was probably the 45th most popular guy on the floor, being a nerdy electrical engineering major at the time. Now, less popular than a guy that they called Fat Mike, and maybe a bit more popular than Slug, who did nothing but sleep. But for some reason, they brought in a teacher/presenter to talk about safe adult time. For some reason, the lounge was packed. Everybody was there. And she goes through the familiar stuff and then starts talking extensively about rubber failures and how there are certain foods that you can't put on rubbers because it compromises the latex. Peanut butter was a bad one, jelly was okay, etc. I can't remember the rest. So I'm right near the presenter. Mind you, this crew hasn't heard me say much of anything. And I get wide-eyed and say discreetly with a worried look, what about taco sauce? It was one of those times where I wasn't sure how many people would hear it, but well, it carried. The place roared with laughter. Must have been my timing, and the presenter stopped in her tracks and then resumed her sentence, and then confirmed directly to me that indeed, taco sauce is just fine. More hysterical laughter from all genders. Well, that night I became a legend. Got some high fives and real name recognition from just about everyone. The remainder of that semester was a lot of fun.